Hi everyone! In today's tutorial I'll show you how to create this dynamic world position effect in Unity. You've probably seen this kind of effect in a couple of games before, like the ones on screen now, usually with some kind of puzzle mechanic involved. No puzzle gameplay today, but I will go over the whole visual setup, starting with a basic single interactor setup with a spherical effect, then moving on to multiple interactors and a box shape, and finally integrating custom textures. All the files you need are in the linked posts in the description, both for URP and built-in, but this video will go over the URP shader graph version. So let's start with a simple single interactor implementation first. It's actually pretty easy to set up. We just need a script and a shader. Starting with the script, we need a position from an object to start a transition from, and a radius. The script is super simple. We take the position of the object and a radius float that gets assigned in the inspector. We then send them to the shader using shader.setGlobalVector and shader.setGlobalFloat. That's the script done. Let's go to the shader graph. Here's what the whole graph looks like. It has a few groups. Here we grab the position from script and turn it into a sphere mask. Then we add in some moving triplanar noise. We create a cutoff for a crisp sphere mask. Sample two different textures and lerp based on the sphere mask. Here we add a colored glowing line. And then finally we have an enum keyword set up so we can switch between swapping textures, appearing and disappearing within the sphere mask. Don't worry, I'm going to jump into the groups now. We need a property with the same name underscore position, and make sure exposed is unticked because this is coming from the script. If we use this as the base color, it outputs just the position over the whole mesh, so it changes when we move the interactor object. Now if we use a distance node between the underscore position and the world position, we can see a soft sphere that moves with the interactor. When the world position and the interactor position are close, the sphere is darker. Next up, to control the size, divide the soft sphere with the float property from the script with reference underscore radius, and exposed is unticked again. Then run the result through a saturate node and a 1- node so that the sphere is white and everything outside of the interactor radius is black. To make the effect look a bit nicer and dynamic, let's add some triplanar noise. Add a new texture property for the noise texture and hook it into the triplanar node. And also add a float property to control the noise scale. For moving noise, add a time node multiplied by a speed float property. Add this to the world position before plugging it into the position input of the triplanar node. And to control how much noise affects the sphere, we lerp between the non-noisy and the noisy sphere. Next step is to create a cutoff point for this lerp result using a step node. And now we can add a cool glowing outline. We take the sphere mask after the noise lerp and subtract the float for the line width. And with a step node create a new cutoff. This version is inverted from the other one. Multiply this with the sphere mask after the step node, and an overlap will remain, which is our outline. Now multiply this with a color and plug it into emission and add it to the base color. With the cutoff sphere, we can now do the fun stuff. Let's start by swapping textures based on the sphere. Sample two different texture assets and lerp them over the cutoff sphere value. Now to make things appear within the interactor radius, plug the cutoff sphere into the alpha slot and make sure that alpha clipping is turned on in your shader settings. And for disappear, we do the same thing as appear, but inverted, but also because our glowing edge is on the inside, that value will first need to be subtracted, or we won't have the glowing line visible. As you've seen, the differences between these three effects is very minimal, only changing the alpha clipping. We can easily switch between the effects using a keyword enum. Add a new enum from the blackboard. Now fill in the three types we need. Swap textures appear and disappear. You can then drag the enum out onto the shader graph and it will have three inputs. The appear and disappear outcomes we had before can be plugged in now, and for swap textures we just want full alpha, so set that to 1. Now you can swap between the styles on the material and you don't need three different shader graphs for it. Moving on to boxes and multiple interactors. We're going to create a box shape with scaling and rotation, use a script to collect all interactor game objects into arrays, make an HLSL file to loop over these arrays, and create a custom function node in place of the box and sphere calculations. So how do we make a box or cube instead of a sphere? First, we need to add two more values to the interactor position script, one for scale and one for rotation. Then we add these two properties, _scale and _rotation, to the shader blackboard. Again, these are not exposed. And for a box shape, we need a different calculation than the sphere. Here is the whole group we're going to add to the graph. So start off by subtracting the interactor position from the world position. Then we put this through an absolute node, so all the negative values become positive. And subtract it from the _scale property to control the shape. Putting this value through a smooth step node with two new float properties for cutoff and smoothness will create the start of a box shape. But the XYZ channels aren't combined properly. So the final part is multiplying all the channels together, and there's our proper box shape. Scaling is now done. Next up is supporting rotation. To do this, we need to branch off the subtracted position result before the absolute node into three rotate about axis nodes set to degrees, one for every axis, in a row. To make it line up properly with the rotation of the game object, we need to use -1 for the axis, otherwise it will look inverted. Plug this back into the absolute node, and now rotation is supported too. With both a sphere and a box setup, you can now add them together if you want to use two shapes at the same time. For multiple interactors, we need to use arrays and loops, and for that we need some C#, some HLSL and a custom node. Let's create a new C# script that puts all the data of the interactor objects into arrays. For the sphere calculations, we need the positions and the radius. For the box interactors, we need the positions again, but also the scales and the rotations. The vector arrays need to be a vector 4 to be sent to the shader. In this collection script, we can also set the shape cutoff and smoothness, because you generally want this to be the same for everything. We find all the interactor objects in start and on enable, and then in late update we loop over the interactors, gather all the needed data into arrays, and send everything to the global shader variables. Now over to the HLSL file for the custom function node. First, the arrays and the two floats are declared. In shaders you have to preset the size of the array, so I've chosen 100 here as a max number of interactors. This is pretty high, so you can change this to whatever you need. And to replace the rotation nodes, I've just copied the rotate about axis code from the Unity docs. Here is the function we will call in the custom function node, interactor radiuses. With these custom node files you need to add _float to the name of the function, so it knows the position. It takes in the world position and outputs the combined shapes of the interactors. In the main body of the code we loop over the 100 max limit, calculating the same stuff that was done in nodes before, and all of those nodes are now just a few lines of code. At the end of every loop, we add the results together, and that is the output of the node. Create a new custom function node with the HLSL file, and add the right input of vector3 and output of float. Fill in the right function name, and you can place this custom node between the world position and the lerp/multiply nodes from before. And then you can remove all the old nodes that were there. With all the calculations moved to the custom node, the whole graph is pretty small now. If you now go back to the scene and duplicate the interactors, disable and enable the collector script, and move the interactors around, all of them will show up in the shader. The final step is adding texture support. We're going to adjust the shader graph and HLSL file to support a texture and texture arrays. We're going to create and import a texture array, adjust the interactor script to support choosing a texture via an index, send these texture indices to the shader, and then read the right texture index. So instead of messing with shapes, we're just going to use the position from the interactors to create a UV for a texture. This is similar to the interactive water or snow I've done before with render textures. In the HLSL script, we need to change the main function inputs to support textures. We do this by adding a Unity texture 2D value and a sampler via sampler state. If you add the values here in the function, it also means you have to add them to the custom function node inputs. So we start here after the rotate pos is calculated using the rotations from the script. We take this rotated world position.xz and divide this by the scale of the box. Then we use this as a UV for our texture sampler. Add this new text value to the smooth step instead of box pos we had before. If we use this value as the UV for our texture, it will show up. However, it has been offset to the corner of where we want it to be. To fix this, just add 0.5 to the position. This will center it in the 0 to 1 space for textures. Now the texture is in the correct space. The only thing left to fix now is to allow scaling of the height. We do this by multiplying the texture with the calculated boxpos.y. Now we can scale the texture up and down to stretch it. That's using one texture, but how about adding multiple textures? We can do this by turning the textures into a texture array. For this we need to set up a texture sheet. For this example I have 4 textures and they are on a 2x2 grid. If you're wondering how I made the textures look like this, it's the same SDF method I used for the lightning particles video. In short, in Photoshop or Photop, turn on the stroke layer setting and then set it to gradient and starburst and adjust it till it looks right. In the import settings of this texture sheet, we can set the texture shape to texture array, and after doing this, the preview image in Unity will look like a stack of textures. Now we need to change the HLSL code for a texture array. The function itself will be adjusted to take a Unity texture 2D array instead of a Unity texture 2D. And now we need to sample an array instead of a single texture. The function for this is sample underscore texture 2D underscore array. And as you can see, sampling this requires another value, namely the index of the texture we want to use. As a quick test, we can use the index of the loop as the texture index. So we set it to I. And now if we have 3 interactors, they will all have a different texture. So what we need to do to control the texture per interactor is to add an int slider to the interactor position script. And by adding a range property before the int declaration, we will get a slider instead of just an int field. And inside of the interactor holder script, we need to add a new array. This is a float array because we can't send an int array. And inside of the update loop, grab the texture index per object and send this array to the global shader properties so we can read it. Back to the HLSL script, we can now add the interactor indices array and replace the I in the texture array loop with shader interactor indices I. And now you can see the texture change when we move the texture index slider per object. So that was the breakdown of this world-changing interactive effect. Again, the resources are all in the description, split up into 3 parts like the video. It also has a step-by-step setup there. You can use the same shader and combine it with stencil buffers to create a cool alternate world portal effect. If you want to learn how to do that, it's basically combining this shader with the decal stencil portal shader from this previous video. Or let me know in the comments if you want to see a full video for this. It's the same stuff as used in the latest Zelda game. If you like this video and want to see more, check out my other shader videos. And I also have a Github site with all my written tutorials and breakdowns about all manner of game dev topics. Big thank you to my patrons who keep the show running. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.